Hi, friends. This is Robert Coons. So it's a few minutes before class here, and so I thought I would throw together a short video for my YouTube channel to explain the nature of the pre-heaven and post-heaven state in Internal Alchemy. So in Internal Alchemy, we especially focus on what's called the pre-heaven state, the Xiantian, and we focus less on the post-heaven state, the Houtian. You may remember in the last video, which incidentally was my first video about Internal Alchemy, that I mentioned that in Internal Alchemy practice, the main idea is that you're trying to recreate the energy that the Tao produced when it created the universe and that your parents produced when their genetic material came together to create you. So roughly speaking, Internal Alchemy tries to copy something that's sort of similar to the precondition of the Big Bang, at least metaphorically speaking, or the precondition of your parents' genetic material coming together to form you. So when a new life is generated, let's say in utero, then that new life is in what's called the pre-heaven state. In other words, it hasn't been born, so it hasn't seen the sky. Ergo, it's pre-heaven. After it's been born and it's seen the sky, it's post-heaven. So basically the idea in Taoism or Chinese medicine is that there's these two states of reality which actually simultaneously exist. And as a result of their simultaneous existence, they influence each other. So just like in your regular life, you have essence, which is physical materials such as sexual material or saliva or tissue cells, etc., right? You have essence, you have qi, which is basically the stuff that provides the physical material with energy, and you have shen, or spiritual awareness. In the pre-heaven state, you also have a kind of essence which is creative, right? It's generative essence. You have qi, which is basically the energy that causes that essence to form into life structures, right? And then you also have shen, which is your sort of most basic awareness. So in the pre-heaven, those are called yuan jing, yuan qi, and yuan shen. And in the post-heaven, they're called jing qi shen, or sometimes they're called jiao gan jing, hu xi qi, and then hou tian shen. So basically the difference between these things, when you use the prefix yuan, it means original. So the yuan jing is the original material. Or the original essence, right? You can think of it as being like the product of your mother and father's genetic material. It's generally considered to be contained between the umbilicus and the kidneys, or generally in the lower abdomen area. Then the yuan qi, right, is the qi that helps that essence to generate the body when you're growing up in the womb, right? And then the yuan shen, or the original spirit, is the first basic awareness that you have before you've been born. Now, after you've been born, you have jiao gan jing. Jiao gan jing means like sexual essence. So as an example for men, that's semen. You have hu xi qi. Hu xi means to breathe, right? So you have the qi that you get from breathing. In Chinese medicine, there are a number of different kinds of qi also, right? Like you can get gu qi, which is the food of qi, the qi of food, etc., etc. But Internal Alchemy isn't medicine exactly. It's a meditation system. So we need to study medicine and meditation separately in order to understand them on their own terms. So you have hu xi qi, which is from the breath. That qi also, of course, makes it into the bloodstream because your oxygen makes it into the blood, right? But the problem with hu xi qi is that there's half which is clear, that's called qing qi or clear qi, and there's half which is turbid, which is the waste product left over from the qi. So that's like the carbon dioxide, for instance, that gets delivered out of your body when you're when you breathe out, right? And then there's they call like Ho Tian Shen, the post heaven spirit, and that's your awareness, but it's also your perception, and it also includes things like your feelings and the potential to feel and think and so on, right? So basically, the most essential pre-heaven materials you were created with the original Jing, and the original Qi and Shen quickly followed during gestation. It's not that those things go away after you're born, right? You still have the original substance that generated your body, which is the genetic material of your parents. You still have the original Qi that built your body up. You can think of it as sort of like the impetus of the body to grow, right? There's the movement of intrinsic energy inside the body that causes it to grow. And this is a very Taoist concept, or it can also be a very Chinese medicine concept. It definitely hasn't been verified by biomedicine, by the way. But let's just talk about the concepts on their own terms, because they have very specific meanings relative to practice, and they work relative to practice. So they don't have to be 100% true based on current biomedical understandings. It's using the concept to explain something that works in practice. So you have this original Qi, which causes the body to grow and form and take on its mobile shape in the long run, right? And then you have the original spirit, the Yuan Shen, which is basically the core consciousness or awareness. Now, I've seen in some places they say there's also something called Ben Shen, which is sort of the original, most basic spiritual awareness of the body, but I've only seen that in a couple of places. Usually they talk about Yuan Shen as pre-heaven. But when you're born, what happens is that you breathe, right? And so when you breathe, not supplied by your mother's, by the umbilical cord, right? But instead you breathe using your nose, then you start to take in air from the outside world, and that starts to make the Qi work differently in your bloodstream and your organs and stuff like that, right? You're relying on the oxygen from the environment to keep you alive. And, incidentally, you're relying on the food from the environment to keep you alive once you quit breastfeeding, right? So then the essence, of course, when you're maturing sexually, right, your body produces sexual essence, which is, it's not what we practice with using, or it's not what we use when we practice Neidan, but it is very important to practice because there's always an element of the genitals having a productive capacity in Neidan practice, even though we're not specifically targeting the genitals in practice. So I just want to get that out of the way. Practicing in specific ways using the genitals in Neidan practice is an incorrect practice. But having said that, many Neidan schools see the importance of the sexual organs as an element of the function of practice, and we'll talk about that in later videos when we talk about things like sealing the yang gate, for instance. But then the post-heaven spirit, it functions on top of the pre-heaven spirit as well. So all of the post-heaven essence, post-heaven Qi, and post-heaven spirit, they basically ride on top of those original essence, Qi, and spirit. And the post-heaven spirit then is what allows us to have a perception of the world, right? So these things are very, very important for orienting ourselves in the world. But the problem with them is that their overuse causes them to become exhausted, and that makes the body lose its intrinsic energy, which ultimately causes the body to go into decline. So basically, to put it in really simple terms, when you are, let's say, looking at a computer screen, just to give an example, then your spiritual energy is dedicated to that thing which is in front of you. And you might have noticed if you look at screens for a long time, your eyes feel tired and you feel drowsy. And if you do it too much, it really is exhausting, right? So that's an example of the spirit being drawn to something. You didn't do any physical labor to make you tired, but the spirit was drawn to something and it made you feel tired. And if you do it too much, it's really bad for you, right? So that's an example of the Shen leaking out. The most common example of the Jing being lost or this essence being lost in Neidan is, people overdoing it with sex, right? So they have too much sexual desire and they actually lose sexual material, and that causes them to have less energy. Now, that's a controversial topic. There are also schools of Neidan which can involve sexual practices as well. I'm not that familiar with them, but certainly they do exist. but I don't want to go too deeply into that, at least during this video. And then in terms of the qi, you lose your qi through a lot of different mechanisms, through toil and labor, through speaking too much, through thinking too much, right? Through desire, through aversion. All of these different things can cause you to lose qi. So over time, the loss of the post-heaven material actually influences the pre-heaven material, which is more innate and deeper. And so it causes it to be lost too. And then in the long run, you can kind of think of it as a person ends up becoming really deficient in energy, and they end up sort of like a husk or a dried out shell of what they originally were when they were a baby or when they were young. So the Neidan process does use the post-heaven, right? It uses the post-heaven spirit, the post-heaven breath, and the post-heaven essence in order to influence the pre-heaven state. That's the big theory of Neidan, is that you use your awareness, right, your waking awareness and your waking mind to return your breath back to the center of your body, to return your mind back to peace, where that essence is located. And then, at least at the start of practice, you want to become really, really calm while you focus your breath gently on your lower abdomen. And then you use the breath to influence your mind to become deeper and more peaceful and darker, so that you can attain mental focus. And when you attain mental focus, eventually you can go back into a state of meditative absorption, right? It's in Neidan, it's called sanmei. The translation is literally samadhi, right? Meditative absorption, very, very similar to the Buddhist idea. And in that state of meditative absorption, you forget yourself, you forget your body, right? Everything. And then ultimately, that's what causes the pre-heaven state to become active again. And so your post-heaven Jing, Qi, and Shen, right? Your post-heaven essence, Qi, and spirit revert back to the pre-heaven state, so that the pre-heaven Jing, Qi, and Shen are held together in one place. And there's a lot more detail about that. Like, this is a very complex theory in Neidan. There's a lot of different moving parts, but that's the core of the concept. Basically, our, let's say, essential productive physical material, the energy that causes everything to circulate and move and be able to have its function, and our spiritual awareness, they have both aspects which were generated before we were born and aspects which were generated after we were born or become dominant after we were born. And the main way to regain the energy of the Tao, as we talked about in the first video, is to revert that post-heaven awareness and physical essence and breath qi back to the center of the body, so that it can merge together with the pre-heaven in silent meditation. And then ultimately that leads to the positive result of Neidan, which is grabbing some of the energy of the Tao and generating it again, so that it can re-enter our post-heaven awareness, and it can cause us to attain energetic development, but also stillness and clarity, which is one of the big purposes of Neidan practice. And then over time, the qi becomes stronger and stronger, and eventually it's significant enough to be able to even exist outside the body. So that's a little primer in pre-heaven and post-heaven in Neidan. Doubtless we'll go into this topic in more detail in the future, but that's enough for now. I hope that you enjoyed the video, and we'll see you in the next one. Also, please make sure to like and subscribe, and check out one of my other videos, because I have lots of different informative videos about Neidan, Yangsheng, and Qigong up on this channel, and I'm just going to keep making them, okay? Probably no video this coming week because I'm headed to Montreal to see my teacher, but certainly the week after, which will be early June 2024, you can expect more cool stuff, especially about Neidan or Internal Alchemy, which is, of course, my favorite practice. See ya.